Well, today, I'm going to go on my next part of my series. I'm doing a series about reminders about God's deliverance. And I've given this many times because I love talking about this subject. I like to encourage people about this subject. And we've already gone through two of them. Last week we did one, and earlier today we did another. Last week we did escape through dramatic miracle. And earlier this afternoon we did escape through death. The third one I like to talk about is actually called escape through hiding. Escape through hiding. And I want to begin by Matthew 5, because I want to make the point, I think this is a good point I should make. Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16, that we are supposed to be lights of the world. So I don't believe our entire purpose is to hide. I don't think that's our entire purpose, because Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16 shows that in Jesus' instruction, he wanted his disciples to be seen. He wanted his disciples to be out there, not hidden under a lampshade, but up in a lamp post. He says here in verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but they put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all those who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." So again, this presentation about escape through hiding is more an exception clause. This is not a normal way of life. This is not the typical Christian way of life. But if there's any of you out there who think there's never a time to hide, I want to educate you today about what the Bible says. There is a time to hide. That is sometimes a way of escape. But we established right up front that we should let our light shine. We should be visible. We should be reflecting God. We should be reflecting Jesus Christ. We should be reflecting the gospel. So we should be a good example to those who see. Having said that, well, let me also mention, I'm not going to turn to all these scriptures. The Bible also has a long list of scriptures about there's a time to be bold. There's a time to be bold. Not only be an example, a light, but there's a time to be bold. We have scriptures on the handout, and you can look up many scriptures in a concordance that Christ was bold. He turned over tables in the temple, and he called the Pharisees whitened sepulchres. He called them hypocrites. So there were times he was bold, and we have examples in the Bible where Peter and John were bold, and Paul and others were bold. Paul and Apollos was bold, and Silas was bold. So we make the point early that we are to be lights in the world, and we need to be bold people. And one thing you're going to see when we talk about hiding is not because we're cowards. When there's a time for you to hide, it's not because you're a coward. You can see a problem right away. Some of you have been reared to be really strong people, and you're not afraid of anything. And you don't want to kowtow to anybody, and we want to stand up, because many of us are like that. My wife has an expression, and I've used this sometimes in traveling places, and I have to explain to those who don't really know my wife and I, they think my wife's insulting me. But she's not. You know my wife, so you know she's not insulting me. But I have to explain this when I'm out other places because they don't know my wife, and it makes her sound like a bad person. But you know my wife. My wife says, my husband's got more guts than sense. And she means it as a compliment because my wife does not like cowards, okay? My wife does not like cowards. So my wife's happy that I have courage. But when she says it that way in her West Texas way, she's basically saying, it's nice you have courage, honey, but remember to use good judgment too. And I would say that's good advice for me, and that's good advice for you. We're not cowards. I'm not a coward, you're not a coward, you're pretty brave. But there is a time to hide. And that may be hard for some of you based on your predisposition and your personality trait and your background, your upbringing. But we're going to see that sometimes hiding is a way of escape. Well, I'm not going to go through all the bold statements. We've established that Christ was set to be the light of the world and that we're supposed to be bold. Let's look at some Old Testament scriptures real quickly about hiding. Let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 6. I'm going to go through these rather quickly, so I think you can keep up with me if you're turning. If not, I'm sorry. I like to give you time to turn, but I do want to get to these things. 1 Samuel 13, verse 6. Here we've got men of Israel. It says, when the men of Israel saw they were in danger, for the people were distressed, then the people hid in caves, in thickets, in rocks, in holes, and in pits. So again, these were warriors, and these were not afraid. They were actually smart in how there's a time to go into a battle, there's time not to go into a battle. 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 2. I'm going to go through these fast. 1 Samuel 19, verse 2. So Jonathan told David, saying, my father seeks to kill you. Therefore, please be on your guard until morning, and stay in a secret place and hide. Jonathan loved David, and Jonathan was even warning him against his own father, saying, you know what? You'd better not be out in the open right now, because he's got soldiers looking for you, and he catches you, it's not going to be good. 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 1 through 6. 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 1 through 6. Now it happened when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, take note, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. And Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel, 3,000 men to find David, who was in the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave, and Saul went in the cave to attend to his needs. He had to go to the bathroom, and David was in there hiding. If 3,000 people are after you, there's a time to hide. And of course, he was hiding in there, and it turned out wonderfully. 1 Kings chapter 17. I love this story here. 1 Kings 17. Here's someone who you hear God talking to you, and you're getting a lot of courage. A lot of courage. Notice this. 1 Kings 17, verses 1 and 2. Then Elisha the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there'll be no rain, no dew nor rain these years until I tell you so. He was sent to give a message to the leader. How would you like to give a message to Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Putin? How would you like to go give a message saying, God told me that you're going to have troubles and things aren't going to get better until he gives me the message, and then I give the message to you? You would probably have a little bit of confidence right then. So he walks back to God, and then the word of the Lord came to him. He says, okay, who do I go to talk to next? I talked to that leader. Who am I going to talk to next? And God says, go east. Okay, east. Okay, what's over in the east? Well, Washington, D.C., or maybe over to London, maybe over to Germany. Okay, going east. And hide. What? You just had me go up there, braggadocio, talking this real bold statement about what you're going to do, and now you're telling me to hide? God said, yes. There was a time for you to be bold, and now there's a time for you to hide. I can just imagine his human nature thinking he was confident and God's worked with him and he's ready. Who am I going to talk to now? And God says, you're not talking to anybody right now. You're going to go hide. I love that example. Isaiah chapter 16, verse 3. I like to bring this one up. Isaiah 16, verse 3. This was a verse that I used to believe meant there was one place of safety somewhere. Because this is the church I was in used this verse to say there's a place of safety. And this verse proved it in most people's minds. And for a long time I believed it proved it too. I don't believe it proves one place of safety, but let's see what it says. Isaiah 16, verse 3. Take counsel, execute judgment, make your shadow like the night in the middle of day. Hide the outcast. Do not betray him who escapes. So it is talking about hiding, although it's not, I don't think, telling us it has to be a certain place of safety at a certain time in history or prophecy. But we did use that. Another one we used for a place of safety was Isaiah 26, verse 20. It's real interesting when I talk to people who have some notions that I used to believe. I have an advantage that they may not have. If they still believe those notions, I know the verses that we used to use to prove it. And I also know why they're not good verses to make that case. But here's another one we used. Isaiah 26, verse 20. Come, my people, enter your chambers and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation is past. I don't think it's telling exactly about a place of safety at the end time, but the gist is certainly there's a time to hide. There's a time to put your head down. Now someone can say, Dave, you think that's going to happen next week? I don't think so, and I'm not even projecting what timetable is going to happen. I think it could happen in increments, or it could happen quickly. But the point is, I am giving you advice, and the reason I'm saying this now is I foresee trouble in our country. I foresee trouble in our world right now. And maybe now's not the time for you to hide, but you better be alert to what the Bible says about it, because when the time comes, I hope you do so. And you say, are we all going to hide at the same time? I doubt it, because all our circumstances are different. Our jobs are different, our families are different, where we live is different. People in Portland had a reason to hide more than people through Texas. The countryside of Texas, we're having a lot of peace right now. In the big cities, you may have to hide more in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Portland, Seattle. Obviously, those individuals may be hiding. They may be trying to be smart about what they do because they don't want their places burned down. They don't want them, if you go out to eat somewhere in different places and you wear the wrong hat or the wrong shirt, you could get beat up. Now you say, I'm strong, I don't care if they try to beat me up. Well, that's your business. Make sure your family's okay with that. But, again, you might want to be smart about where you go, what you say. And of course, this will come down to even Facebook and Twitter and Parler. You want to be careful. There'll come a time you want to hide. There'll be times you want to speak up, and there'll be times you want to hide. Dave, are you saying we should all do it right now? No, I want you to take responsibility for your choices. I just want you to be educated and aware there's a time to hide. Let's look at Amos 5, verse 13. And of course, this is in the bulletin. This is among friends this week. It talks about, therefore the prudent keep silent at that time, for it's an evil time. And I think the day is coming that if you want to be considered smart, not a coward, it doesn't say the coward should keep silent. It says the prudent should keep silent. There's certainly a matter where you have to remember too. I've envisioned sometimes if I were in a tough situation, I know my two sons would jump into a battle more than I would because they're 37 and 40, they would jump into a battle, and my battle days are mostly over. But I can see myself saying to them, you take care of your families, this one's for me. I'll stand up for this one, you take care of your families. Because they would want to say, no, Dad, I don't want you to go out there and get in trouble. You've got a wife to take care of, you've got kids to take care of, let me handle this. Let me be the one to handle this. Because I know they have a lot of courage. But I would want them to realize there's a time to keep quiet, guys. There's a time to sit back because it's evil time. Now, I'm not going to go Moses' example, Moses' mother, but certainly when the government said all the babies should be killed, what did Moses' mother do? She hid the baby. And then she was really smart. She technically was correct because Pharaoh said, put your babies in the water. So if they came to interrogate her, they would say, did you put your baby in the water? I did. We're going to give you a lie detector test. Give me a lie detector test. I put my baby in the water. Now, she didn't follow Pharaoh's goal. Pharaoh's goal was to kill the baby. She put the baby in the water to safety. You know the story. But again, so even a famous example in the Bible talks about hiding. Let's go over to Joshua chapter 2. I bring this up from time to time because, when I like to bring this up because when I bring up the example that there's a time to lie, I remember times when when I was new in the faith, I never thought there'd be any time to lie. And of course, you realize we should not lie for lust. We should not lie to hurt somebody. We should not lie to steal. We should not lie to get better grades. We should not lie to get a promotion on the job. We should not lie for many, many reasons we should not lie. We're going to see here someone was lying to save life. And we're going to see this reminds us of Nazi Germany. There was a time, to show you how ignorant I was very sincere in my first love. There was a time that I thought if I were hiding Jewish people behind fake walls from the Nazis and the Nazis came into my house and said, "Where are the Jews?" I thought I would say, "They're over there behind that fake wall." You say, "Well, Dave, that sounds ignorant." Well, I was ignorant. The thing was, I was so dedicated that you never lie that I even missed the time that it's okay to lie. By the way, how often have you had Jews behind a fake wall in your life? So you don't lie once a week. You may not even lie once a year. You may not even lie about 5 times in your lifetime, depending on the circumstance. So I am not encouraging lying. For you young people, I'm not encouraging lying. I am telling you the truth from the Bible. If you lie to save life, it's good. Now, people don't like the Rahab story, but let me tell you, she's listed in the book of James and Hebrews as a good example because she told her lie. By the way, whenever I give this as an interactive Bible study on a church visit, in a group this size, there's always one person who really has trouble with that. And usually by the end of the 45 minutes hearing everyone talk, they realize this is an exception clause. I remember when we had our Bible study in there, David Moss really had trouble with this one. And then he finally, because he's a smart man, he finally got it. He got what I was saying. Maybe I needed to say it better, but I finally said it well enough he got it. But again, I admire the fact that he, like me and like you, we don't like to lie. We don't make a habit of lying. But let's look at the circumstance. Joshua chapter 2. Now Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men out from Achaia Grove to spy secretly. Go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and they came to the house of the harlot named Rahab, and they lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, men have come here tonight from the country of Israel to search out the country." So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out the country." Verse 3, the king's saying is, "Rahab, we know that you're helping these spies. And we as the government don't like it. We as the government don't like that you're helping these spies. So deliver them to us. We want them." Now what you're going to find out is Rahab told one lie about 4 different ways. Some people say she told 4 lies. No, she told one lie 4 different ways. So the woman took the 2 men and hid them. There's a time to hide as a way of escape. She hid them. And she said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they were from." Well, she knew where they were from. She knew where they were from. She's trying to save their lives. Probably save her own bacon, too. It happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men left. The men went out the gate. Did they go out the gate? No, they were on the roof hiding. She says, where they went, I don't know. They went out the gate. I don't know if they went north or east. I'm not sure. But if you hurry up and catch them, you can get them. Pursue them quickly, because you can overtake them. So you see, she's told the same lie, like 4 different ways, and she was believable. And she's viewed in the book of James and in the book of Hebrews as this was a good thing. So when I have people tell me, "Dave, I don't think you're right about that," friends, I'm going to believe the book of James and the book of Hebrews over a dissenter about this issue. It's not even close. And if a person gets in my face, well, I don't like people getting in my face rudely, but on the other hand, I know what the Bible says, and I know why it says this, and I know why it was permissible. I know the reason. I do understand. Remember, I was one who thought you would never lie about this. So I understand where they're coming from. And so I'm trying to let them know this is not an excuse to lie all the time. This is not a person to be a lying person. There is an exception clause to hide someone and to lie about, to misdirect. Verse 6, she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax. This reminds me of, this is a silly thing. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. When we were building this building, we had a whole lot of fun. And we'd play hide and seek in this building. And I had a hiding place that they didn't find me that night. They kept looking and looking and looking. Finally, I came out. I'll tell you where it was, and those you builders would know where I was. They had a bunch of insulation in that room over there. And I was hiding in the insulation. And you say, doesn't the insulation itch you and scratch you and torment you? Yes. But I sat in that insulation for hours. There's an old story, I don't know the story exactly. The princess slept on a pea and could feel the pea, something like that. That's my wife. My wife, if she sleeps in a bed and there's a pea in the bed, if there's a stone in the bed, she'll feel it. I'm the that. I'm the opposite of that. I can sleep on planes. I can sleep in any bed, anywhere, anytime. So I was in the insulation hide. It was not the flax. It was insulation. But those David, the other teenagers, none of them could find me. Finally, I had to come out. But, so I understand sometimes you have to hide. Going in the stalks of flax, and they were up on the roof. Rahab hid the spies. Here's another example I love. Acts chapter 9, verse 22. Acts chapter 9, verse 22. If someone were dropping you down in a basket to keep you away from people who are trying to get you, that's the time where you wouldn't want to burp, you wouldn't want to sneeze. You're trying to get away. So in Acts 9, verses 22 through 25, Paul, strong Paul, bold Paul, knew there was a time to hide. So verse 22, Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ. Now, after many days were passed, the Jews plotted to kill him. They were going to kill him. But their plot became known to Saul. He heard about it. So the people watched the gates day and night to kill him. If you make a mistake and get out in the open, we're going to get you. But the disciples took him by night and led him down through the wall in a large basket. Putting the rope over the wall, letting him down. And again, you don't want to sneeze, you don't want to burp, because here you're going to give away where you're at, and they're going to get you, and they're either going to stab you, probably, or beat you, possibly. But again, he was hiding. This is the courageous Paul. Paul who stood up to everybody. But when it's time to be quiet, when it was time to hide, he would hide. I want to conclude with 3 examples from Jesus, the Son of God himself. Because maybe Rahab's example didn't impress you. Maybe Paul's example didn't impress you. Maybe those scriptures I read didn't impress you. Maybe they didn't help you. But certainly, you're not going to call the Son of God a coward, are you? Heavens no, you would not do such. John 8, verse 59. This is the chapter where Christ is talking back and forth to these Jews. He's instructing them, and they don't like it. Finally, they get tired of his instructions, so they call him names. The same thing we face today. I hate it when people start calling names, because that means the discussion to me is over. And see, the thing is, when I talk to people who have a different worldview than myself, they often go immediately to calling names. Well, to me, once someone calls me a name, I won the discussion. And I don't proceed any further. Why should I proceed any further? You didn't have the courage of your convictions. You didn't have the courage of the argument. So, okay, you've automatically jumped. And see, most today jump right into name calling. On all sides, by the way. And we want to make sure we're not doing that. Because that's just not helpful communication. That's not beneficial communication. Well, they started calling him names, because they said, you don't know who your father is. We know who our father is. Well, that's a shot. That's a shot. And how did he respond? He said, well, your father's the devil. That's how he responded. So he's going back and forth with them, and finally they grabbed stones. Look, verse 59. They took up stones to throw at him. Not just one stone. They wanted to throw a bunch of stones at him, pretty big stones. They wanted to bruise him. They were mad enough they wanted to kill him. But Jesus hid himself and went out the temple, going through the midst of the crowd. He blended in. And none of you is going to call Christ a coward. None of you would do that. I mean, people who don't believe, atheists would call him a coward, but not Christians who look at him as Savior. You're not going to call him a coward. But it shows, again, there's a time to hide. Why? It wasn't time for him to speak up, because remember when Stephen spoke up in the book of Acts, what did they do? They killed him. When Christ spoke up to the Pharisees in Matthew 23, what happened? That started the slope of they finally killed him. It wasn't time yet. So it's not because you're a coward, you're trying to be smart. You're trying to have good sense. Look at John chapter 10, verses 39 and 40. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who may see may be made blind." Well, when the Pharisees heard this, they had, I'm in verse 9, chapter 9, sorry. No wonder it didn't make sense. Chapter 10 is better. That's where I want to go. Chapter 9 is pretty good too. It just doesn't fit in my sermon. Verse 39 of chapter 10 says, "Therefore they sought again to seize him, but he escaped out of their hand." And where did he go to hide? He went to the country. He didn't hang around in Austin, didn't hang around in Houston or Dallas or Chicago or New York. He went to the country. He went away again beyond the Jordan to the place where John the Baptizer was baptizing people at first, and he stayed there. He went to a deer stand. He went somewhere out there where the masses weren't. And there's a lot of places like that. In fact, quite frankly, I'm happy to be in Texas. I mentioned at the beginning of my Bible study that I saw Alan and Lana Hicks, and they live in Georgia. They talked about moving out here. They'd like to move out here. And in their words, they want to get out of the blue state and want to come to a red state. And they want to come where there's more liberty and freedom. And they also like our congregation. Again, hello if you're listening in today. But they want fellowship. See, because on the internet, people can get messages, but they can't always get fellowship. Now, you can have people in the world, you can have family and friends of fellowship, but sometimes there's certain, if your lifestyle or your mindset's the same, then you can have great fellowship. And I told the board when I sent them a little text last night, with those two individuals, I'm on the same page as them religiously and worldview. And it's really nice. It's really nice. I mean, I'll talk to people who have a different religious view, and I'll talk to people who have a different worldview. And I'll be polite to them, and I'll try to endure their insults. But I'll tell you, it's really nice to have people who have the same religious view. And it's really nice to talk to people who have the same worldview. Because too many people are fighting right now, and again, sometimes the people of different worldview will say, you don't have the facts, and I might think, well, they don't have the facts, or we may have the facts and just see it differently, and I don't want the drama. In my life, I tell people, I will take real drama. Real drama, like if there's marriage troubles, I'll try to help. If there's job problems, I'll try to help. I'll try to help wherever I really can, but artificial drama, I don't have time for artificial drama, because there's too much real drama. I don't need foolishness. But again, if you have things in your life you need to talk about, you can talk to anyone you want to talk to, but I'm available to talk to you as well. I don't mind real situations. I've heard a lot of real situations in my life, and that is stressful, to be honest, but I will try to help you. But again, Jesus went in the country in Jordan. Final verse I want to turn to is John 12, verse 36. And I am in the right chapter this time. John 12, verse 36. Verse 35, he says, "A little while longer the light is with you. Walk while you have light, lest darkness overtake you." This is good advice for us today, isn't it? He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light. And after he gave those great words, these things Jesus spoke and departed, and was hidden from them. He was not afraid to talk. He was not afraid to stand up. He got sad when he saw trouble. He got sad when he anticipated his death. but he kept his eyes focused on God's will and got focused on what the Father said, and he fulfilled his calling, fulfilled his responsibility without sin. You and I may make mistakes. We may make mistakes. Sometimes we'll be too bold. Sometimes we won't be bold enough. We'll make a lot of mistakes. We try to correct our ways. We talk to God about it. And as a loving dad, he forgives us. As a loving dad, he helps us. But I want to help you again. I just feel this is something I've given for 20 years at different times, different places, to a lot of congregations. And I say the outline's the same, but the support material is always different because whatever extemporaneous comments I have are based on what's happening at the time. But to me, these 5 points are so critical that you are going to need God's deliverance. But we've only talked about 3 so far. We've talked about escape through dramatic miracle. We've talked about escape through death. Now we've talked about escape through hiding. I look forward to covering the last 2 points to try to be encouraging to you about what God is doing and how God will help you.